Hi, this is Clifford Oliver with the ASA's Farm Photography for Kids. And you don't have to be a kid. Your kid goes from anywhere from 3 to 300. Today I'm figuring to do a class on how does my camera work? How does my camera, look at all of these dials and buttons and oh my God. Don't have a new camera or modern eyes where you got all of this stuff going on here. They're little mini computers. Yeah, the cameras have got everything. But how does my camera work? And all cameras do work the same way, even the phone cameras. They all have to have a shutter speed. They all have to have an aperture. And they all have to pay attention to ISO. Let's start out with ISO, which stands for International Standard. I don't know what the O is. But the international standard is, it rates light, it measures light. How sensitive your film, even though we're not using a film, we've forced ourselves. I know I have one. I always carry spares with me. Bear with me, good people. Aha, I do. I always carry a spare with me. This is the new film, and it's better than film because you're not restricted to 36 pictures on a roll of film. No, these can go for hundreds. And the nice thing is too, you can change your ISO mid-roll. Couldn't do that with real film. And ISO, I say it measures how sensitive your film, your substrate, is to light. The lower the number, the more light you need to make an image. The higher the number, and some of these go up to 3,200, 32,000. I mean, you can take pictures in a low light situation. You know, a black cat in a coal bin. Yes, you can do that now with these new digital cameras and phones. And this new film, where you literally, this is a 32 gig card, and you can put hundreds of photographs on here, which is marvelous. Yeah, so that's what ISO does. It determines how sensitive your light is. On a day like today, when we have all of the sunlight, you want a really low number ISO, like 100. A low ISO will also give you detail. You can pick up detail that you can't get on the bigger ISOs, on the higher number ones, the ones that you have to use when it's a low light situation, like at night or even in the evening, or when it's cloudy, you know, a storm coming. After ISO is your aperture. And the aperture, you've often seen it. You've probably seen it on TV when you see lenses closed down. ISO controls the volume of light hitting your film, hitting your substrate, your light-sensitive material. The volume, and you've seen it, right? That inside interleafing circle that gets smaller, which allows very little light in, or opened up all the way, which allows a lot of light in. Again, too, depending on your lighting situation, if you're out in a day like today, you don't need a lot of light coming in because there's a lot of light, right? So you can go down to f16, f11, really small f-stops. And I should say f-stops and apertures are the same thing. Photographers just use those two words to describe the same thing to confuse you. Yeah, it makes us think that that we know something. And actually, in the old days of photography, photographers used to call themselves doctors. And my wife and child will tell you, I still do that today. But yeah, that's what that, and I'm sure you've seen it. That's your aperture. And apertures are really strange, in that the smaller the number, the bigger the aperture. The bigger the number, like f16, is the smaller the aperture. Why that is? Well, it's a mathematical thing, covering area. And I'm not good in math, so I just memorize the numbers. The next big thing that all cameras have is your shutter speed. And your shutter speed is that click. I'm going to do one now so you can hear it. And it's fast. It usually is measured in hundredths of a second. Yeah, it's usually a fraction of a second. But these new cameras are so magnificent. I'm gonna do one where it's more than a second. Come on, here we go. Actually, let's do one for a second. And you'll hear two clicks. One click is the mirror opening, the shutter opening, and the second click is the shutter closing. Could you hear it? Now normally when you're taking pictures, and normally you're taking pictures like, I'm gonna say 1/25th of a second, because it's so fast, come on, 1/25th of a second, you can't, that opening film sounds like one click. But if you slow it down, before I did 1 second, I'm gonna try a half a second, just to see if you, here we go, can hear them both open and close. Oh yeah, you can. Even a half a second is slow enough that you can hear that. And while that thing is open, that first click is letting the light in, the second click is cutting that light off. Because the camera is just a light tight box. That's all, even your phone, it's just a light tight box, and it has this light sensitive material in it. And we're now, the shutter speed controls how long that aperture f-stop volume of light is hitting your light sensitive material. And again too, these three things work in conjunction with one another. Again too, a bright sunny day, you don't need a lot of light coming in, so you can use a fast shutter speed. When it's a low light situation, you need light to come in, then you want to use a slow shutter speed. And I want to say too, the lower the number, the slower the shutter speed, the more light that comes in. The faster the number, the faster the shutter speed, and the less amount of light comes in. Now this also affects your pictures. You can stop action. Everyone, especially you sports photographers out there, want to stop action, you need a fast shutter speed. And usually for human beings, anything faster than 1/25th of a second, like 2/50th of a second. You know, that's, you can see the numbers are going up, and it's a faster shutter speed, and it'll stop action. The lower the number, it doesn't stop action and increases the chance for blur. Now you're getting into my favorite subject, blur. I call it creative blur. I also like to think of it as moving pictures, where, oh, perfect. Well, I just opened this page and it's a perfect example of what I want to talk about in creative blur. It's a slow enough shutter speed that my background is blurred. And how I do that is by following my subject. It's a thing called panning. Panning is you're outthinking the camera. Because you're following your subject and you have a slow shutter speed, your camera thinks your subject is not moving. So it'll take a crisp picture of your subject. But everything else is moving. It's not really moving, you're moving because you're following along with your subject. And that creates what I like to think of as a creative blur or moving pictures, pictures that indicate motion. I hope I haven't confused any of you too much with all of these f-stop shutter speeds, apertures, and ISOs. But again, too, if you have any questions, feel free to call Katie Jalik at ASA or myself, Clifford Oliver, at 518-692-9559. And as always, YouTube and the library.